Eggs and Issues, a monthly business forum bringing timely economic discussion to the region for 35 years. Presented by the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce. Presenting sponsors, Bank of America and Martins Point Healthcare. Cooperating sponsors, First Light, WEX, and Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. Community Corner sponsor, Coral Palmer. Reception sponsors, Clark Insurance, KeyBank, and Veril. Tomorrow's Leaders and Entrepreneurs sponsors, Springborn Staffing Center and AAA Northern New England. Media partners, News Radio WGAN, The Forecaster, WMTW News 8, Maine Biz, with production support provided by Headlight. Special community partners, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, Spectrum Healthcare Partners, the University of Southern Maine, and Southern Maine Community College. And now, please welcome Portland Community Chamber President, Jim Cohen.
Good morning, Portland, and welcome to Eggs and Issues, the monthly business breakfast of the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce. My name is Jim Cohen, coming to you live from my living room studios here in the North Deering section of Portland. I'm a partner with the Veril Law Firm, and I'm honored to serve as the volunteer president of the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you all once again for joining us safely this month for Eggs and Issues. Today also happens to mark the nearly 1-year anniversary of Eggs and Issues going virtual. And so I want to thank all of you in the audience for sticking with us, actually growing our overall audience. So thank you. Also behind the scenes, helping to make this program run smoothly are Andrea Chim, Tommy Johnson, and Quincy Hensel, many others from the staff. So it's truly a team effort. I want to thank all of them for helping to make this program run as smoothly as it does every month. Shortly, we will turn to our featured program about exciting developments within the University of Maine system, and our special guests, University of Maine President Joan Farini-Mundy and University of Maine System Chancellor Daniel Malloy. However, before we continue further on the agenda, I wanted to provide a brief update on the City of Portland's Charter Commission. Over the past few months, we have been letting you know about the fact that there will be a Charter Commission process starting this summer, and that there will be elections later this spring to allow Portlanders to serve on the Charter Commission. At this point in time, the City of Portland has now concluded its process for candidates to qualify for the ballot. And it appears that 24 candidates have now successfully qualified to run for 9 open seats on the Charter Commission, 5 district seats, and 4 at-large seats. The election will be held in June, and requests for absentee ballots are now available online through the Portland City Clerk's office. Looking forward, the Chamber intends to continue playing an important role in educating our members about the public, about the Charter Commission, and other important issues facing our city. The Chamber's top policy issues remain expanding public transportation, affordable housing, and workforce development. As we plan to seek your opinion about the key issues facing our city, expect to see a survey coming your way, because we want to know how you would like our city to be governed. As a final note, I'm very proud of the Chamber of today. We have an active and diverse board. We are working hard to promote a fairer and more equitable community, to promote prosperity for all, and to encourage civility in our public discourse. We will continue this important work to ensure that you have a voice in civic and civil discourse. However, we do not claim to have all the answers, and we can always do better. In this regard, if members of the public feel we should be doing a better job, please don't start your dialogue in the form of a political attack. That is not civil dialogue, and it does not help us come together. Rather, please consider starting your dialogue by reaching out to us directly and talking with us. That's how civil societies behave, and it is how we should all conduct ourselves. We can disagree, but we do not have to be disagreeable. Turning to the topic of Chamber events, an update on the Chamber's annual Imagine Portland event. Under more normal circumstances, we would have welcomed 1,000 of our closest friends to Brick South in January for an evening of camaraderie and celebration. Unfortunately, the pandemic prevented us from proceeding with that event, but the show must go on. Instead, on June 9th from noon to 1 p.m., we will be hosting our virtual version of Imagine Portland. At this event, we will take time to celebrate the resiliency of our business community and to honor individuals and organizations who have made a difference to the Portland region through social responsibility, business adaptability, community partnership, creative entrepreneurship, and tireless advocacy. We encourage all of you to sign up and register for our annual celebration. Limited sponsorship opportunities are available for those who are interested. We look forward to hosting everyone on June 9th. Now at this time, I would like to take a moment to once again thank all of our sponsors for Eggs and Issues who make this event possible, whether in person or virtual. First and foremost, our presenting sponsors, Bank of America and Martins Point Healthcare. I also want to thank our other generous sponsors, cooperating sponsor, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, reception sponsors, Clark Insurance, Key Bank, and Vero, our coffee sponsor, Skowhegan Savings Bank, and our remote parking sponsor, Vitalius Real Estate Group, our community corner sponsor, Goral Palmer, and our Tomorrow's Leaders in Entrepreneur sponsor, AAA of Northern New England. A special thank you to our media partners, The Forecaster, WJN, WMTW, Maine CW, and Maine Biz. And a thank you to our FMI sponsor, the Portland Public Library. We continue to miss our friends at Headlight Audiovisual and the Holiday Inn by the Bay, and we hope to be back in person soon and working with them once again. Finally, a very special thank you to our special community partners who support all of our chamber initiatives. Anthem, Spectrum Healthcare Partners, University of Southern Maine, Southern Maine Community College, and MEMIC. Let's have a virtual round of applause for all of our generous sponsors. Now on to today's program, The Path to Prosperity for Maine and its People. Today's program features the University of Maine President, Joan Farini Mundy, and University of Maine System Chancellor, Daniel Malloy. Joan Farini Mundy is the president of the University of Maine and its regional campus, the University of Maine at Machias, and she serves as University of Maine System Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation. Prior to joining UMS in 2018, she was the Chief Operating Officer of the National Science Foundation. She currently serves on the National Academy's Board on Higher Education and Workforce, the Board of Maine and Company, and chairs the UMS Science Advisory Board and the UMS Vaccine Planning and Partnership Task Force. Daniel P. Malloy is the Chancellor of the University of Maine System. As a former prosecutor, lawyer, mayor, and two-term governor of Connecticut, Chancellor Malloy brings 22 years of public service leadership to the University of Maine System, which he joined in 2019. Under Chancellor Malloy's leadership during the pandemic, the UMS experienced one of the nation's safest returns to in-person class and work, maintained student enrollment despite and set the standard in serving company and community needs, from hand sanitizer production to helping Maine's manufacturers pivot to produce PPE. In today's program, we will discuss how Maine's largest education and economic development enterprise is leveraging new investment and innovation to transform itself and shape the state's future. As a reminder, like other virtual Eggs and Issues programs, we will be taking questions from the audience today. Please use the chat section in YouTube, and we will do our best to convey your questions to the panelists, time permitting. If you have any additional questions following today's program, you're welcome to send them to the chamber at chamber@portlandregion.com. Now at this time, I would like to welcome President Farini Mundy and Chancellor Malloy. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. or this morning. It's evening somewhere.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here, Jim. We're pleased and eager to have a chance to chat with the Portland community and talk about the great work that the University of Maine system is doing.
Wonderful, and welcome Chancellor Malloy as well.
Great to be with you.
So for our audience, we've organized today's program. I'm going to ask a series of questions, and Chancellor Malloy and President Faridi-Mundy are going to be providing us some helpful information about the system, some of the exciting developments that we can be looking forward to, some of the great work that the system has been doing on behalf of all of us here in Maine. So I'm going to start with Chancellor Malloy. Chancellor, if you look around the country, there is no region in which the demographics are more daunting for a leader of public higher education system than in New England. In fact, Maine ranks third behind your native Connecticut and neighboring Vermont among the nation states where public K through 12 school enrollment is falling fastest, with enrollment projected to drop by 12% between 2014 and 2026. You no doubt have had many lucrative offers after leaving the governorship of Connecticut. What drew you to this challenge to become leader of the University of Maine system in almost 2 years into the job? What have you learned?
Well, I think in some senses, my mother made me do it. I grew up in a family of I was the 8th child, and my mother said to me every single day that we share the earth together. Daniel, you have an obligation to leave the world a better place for you having lived in it. And I've tried to live a life of doing that. And you talked about some of the things I've done over my time. I took this job because it's a challenge, and the demographic challenge is just a part of it. It's a big rural state, the most rural state in the nation. And there are other challenges, but I think this is a great system that has paid dividends to the state over a long period of time, but it also needs an updating, quite frankly. Not only do our physical structures need to be updated, but our thinking and our investment pattern in the fields of study and in research, most particularly, have to be stepped up mightily in the coming years. If Maine is to be competitive with the rest of New England, the rest of the nation, and the rest of the world, we have a lot of work to do. And it's an exciting time to be involved in higher education. You know, I had a great discussion with my friends out at Jack's Lab just recently, wherein we had this discussion about how much we now know that we didn't know just a few years ago, and how are we going to apply that in the future. And if we're going to apply that in the future, we're going to need a workforce with different skill sets. We're going to need more engineers to bring about the application of what we've learned about medicine and bioscience. So this is an exciting time to be involved. And then, quite frankly, as I was looking at the opportunities I had, I learned that Joan Faridi-Mundy had taken the job as the president of the University of Maine, and quite frankly, that excited me. She has a great background. She's a great leader. She's a wonderful partner in what we need to accomplish here in Maine. I also had the fortunate opportunity to invite the former Justice of the Maine Supreme Court, long time serving, to help us reinvent the law school around some early investments already made by the Alfond Foundation years ago. And then, of course, we also have had the opportunity, since Joan and I have been here, to work with the Alfond Foundation and secure almost half of a $500 million commitment that they've made to the state of Maine. So I wanted to be here. I had to be here. I had to be busy and working hard, and I was looking for the right partnership.
Well, thank you so much, and certainly glad to have you here in Maine, and appreciate the good work that you've been doing over the last 2 years. Let me ask one more question, and this really is to both of you, but maybe Chancellor Malloy might ask you this first. What has the university learned during the course of the pandemic that will change the way that it does business moving forward?
It's a great question. And at the very outset, and I think Joan will remember this, in the early days, the darkest days perhaps of COVID, when we really hadn't learned what we needed to learn, we didn't know how to do these things. I said to everybody, let's make a list of what we learn about ourselves and what will have application in a post-pandemic timeframe. And that list has gotten rather long. We are far more nimble than anyone thought higher education could be. We have effected change at a rate never before seen in higher education. We have, on the faculty level, we have faculty members who swore they would never teach online, have been teaching online, and some of them are swearing at us because we want them to go back into a classroom. Students are, they're stronger than we could have imagined. And we always knew students were strong and they could adjust. But the level of adjustment that pre-K through 12 students have had to make, that our students in a baccalaureate, a master's, or a doctoral studies have had to make has been quite amazing. Now, this has been hard work. I mean, it's cost us about $100 million in lost revenue and additional expenses. And it has tired to the extreme many of our employees who are working round the clock, literally 7 days a week, to make sure that the product that we are required to deliver, that's the human capital to drive Maine's economy, will be available to it. And so I think we've also learned that we're stronger than we thought we were, that we are capable of much more rapid change than we could ever have imagined in quote unquote the academy. And that will be applicable, I believe. I also, at the very outset, made a note to myself. The period of the pandemic would be an excellent time to reintroduce to the people of Maine the importance of having a higher educational system and also having a research university in that constellation of universities. Not that, every one of our universities is great. Today I'm on the Farmington campus doing my semester visit. Other days I've been down at the University of Southern Maine, led by the president, by that president who was also an active member in this organization, your organization. So we've learned a lot. We're going to apply it. I think students going forward are going to want multiple forms of delivery of coursework. I envision in the future that many students will go to campuses and take certain courses online and certain courses in person. So I think we're going to have to make those adjustments going forward. Those are just a couple of ideas and a comment on what has been Mr. Toad's wild ride for the last 2 years since I got here.
Thank you, Chancellor. And as the parent of a college student who's been wrestling with virtual versus in person, I have a very personal understanding of the challenges that you all face. Let me turn to you, President Farini-Mundy. Same question. How's the pandemic affected the university? What have you learned? How has it changed the way you do business?
Thanks. We have indeed learned a lot, and the Chancellor has summarized so much of that, but I would also reframe that a little bit and say things that we kind of knew have come to the surface, have shown themselves now over these past many months. One would be the ingenuity of our faculty and staff. As they stay focused on their mission of keeping learning going and providing the workforce for the state of Maine and beyond, they have figured out so many new ways of doing that fundamental work. The enrollment management people have come up with great new techniques and tactics to keep our students, interested in the universities in our system, and to find ways to deal with virtual tours and virtual time with faculty and deans and everybody else. And so I just think it's allowed the ingenuity and the caring and the concern to come through. Because we've brought together groups. The Chancellor has brought them together. I've brought them together on this campus and everywhere across the system. Mixed, groups of folks from multiple levels and layers of the university have had to get together to solve the problems here. I like to use the wastewater data analysis that we're doing based here at the University of Maine as an example. First of all, we partner across the system with other universities. We're partnering with towns in Maine to take samples of wastewater to take a look at the levels of COVID coronavirus in those samples, But those partnerships involve scientists, engineers, facility staff on the campuses who really understand the ways in which the wastewater systems are configured, and the press and the public relations folks who have to figure out how we explain very complicated science in a clear way. So it's brought together groups of people from multiple corners and parts of our enterprise who come together to solve problems really creatively, really clearly. And one thing I would like to just amplify from what Dan said is that we've also learned, or it's been more visible, I guess, that the incredible investment made by the state of Maine, by the federal government, and by the system itself in making sure that we have a research and development infrastructure in place in this system. A big chunk of that, of course, at the flagship at the Research University, University of Maine, but it extends across the system. We have scientists, engineers, students who are engaged in that work, who have all been able to come to the table to help solve the interesting challenges that the pandemic gives us, including epidemiologists from the University of Southern Maine, microbiologists and virologists from UMaine, advising us with science. But all of that's possible because we've built up a great science infrastructure here in the university system.
Great. No, thank you so much. And I've certainly also observed how the pandemic has brought so many of us together, and from different corners of the state, different corners of the country. I'd never heard of Zoom a year ago at this time, and the very fact that we can each be in different places in the state and speaking to an audience spread out over the state really shows how technology is a positive thing that we've all learned. So that's great to hear that the university is also experiencing that important mixing. Let me ask another question. This really goes to both of you, and it I think we all read about the Harold Alfond Foundation and its $500 million investment in many schools around the state, but including 8 organizations that they see as most central to the state's success. And the largest of these gifts was $240 million to the University of Maine system. I understand that that's among the 10 largest philanthropic gifts ever made to a higher education institution in the country's history. What led the Alfond Foundation to bet big on the University of Maine system, and how are you going to leverage this incredible investment?
Joan, you want to go first? Or you want me to go?
Why don't you start and I'll continue.
Okay. First of all, the Alfonds have made wise investments in the future of Maine for many, many years. I think what they decided to do was to seize upon an opportunity and make a major new commitment to Maine. Clearly there was a process by which they examined the potential contributions that those that would be funded could make in the state of Maine. I think in the 4 pockets of money flowing to our system, one is around Black Bear Athletics, the only Division I program in the state, and that's part of the history of the Alfonds, Mr. Alfond himself, with respect to his commitment around that. And let me, as we talk about athletics, extend to the hockey coach who passed away, his family, our condolences. But there were 3 other pots of money: student success and retention, engineering, computing and information science, and graduate and professional center. I think what they expect of us is that we're going to use this money wisely to make investments in our infrastructure, as well as our personnel, as well as in our students, to bring about real change in the state of Maine, to make sure that we continue the promise of providing the human capital necessary to drive Maine's further development. Listen, Maine was on a strong run before COVID. It's been interrupted. It's going to recover. We're going to get back to normal. And I think in a post-COVID period of time, people are going to recognize the quality of life, how well we've handled this crisis in the state of Maine, and the international ability of our state to compete. But what will drive that and sustain it on the long run is human capital. We need to double our output in engineers. I don't know how else to say that. We are under-engineered in the state of Maine. Engineers are retiring at a more rapid rate than we've been producing them. And we made that argument. It was an accepted argument. And clearly, the $75 million dedicated to that area is extremely important. We also, one of the things that I've identified that is a moral imperative is that we retain more of our students going forward. It is a fact that people who leave a baccalaureate program after starting one, only about less than 10% of those folks will ever receive a baccalaureate degree. That means we've got to do a better job in making sure that students come to us, survive that first year experience, that first semester experience, that maybe that sophomore year, and do more outreach and support. It's also a way, in one of your earlier questions, for us to address the demographic problem. We spend a lot of money, in admissions, attracting students, getting them enrolled, getting them on campus or online for their first course or first semester, but then we lose too many of them. So we are going to be committed to increasing our retention rate, committed to making sure more people graduate with a degree, and committed to make sure that more people have credentials of real value to go out into the workforce. And we see that tie between ourselves and the state. And quite frankly, I believe that the Alphons understood that as the largest institution, a collection of institutions, including a research university and other research functions such as Cutler down at the University of Southern Maine, that was a wise investment. I'll leave it to Joan to have her own comments and clean up all the mistakes I undoubtedly made.
President Farini-Mundy.
Thanks. It is an enormous vote of confidence from the Alphon Foundation. We're very grateful for this chance. As I think we mentioned, there is also an expectation. It's a challenge grant in many ways, right? We need to bring in $170 million more to match and to complete and to extend the work that we've already been charged to do through that grant. So that work has begun. And what's very, very gratifying about it is that because we have the big anchor, the enormous anchor grant for the system and that will affect all of our universities, our donors are getting interested in that and seeing that vote of confidence and wondering how they become a part of that big picture, how they can engage with us. We'll also be seeking federal funding, corporate philanthropy. We have an elaborate process underway to look for how we can leverage those dollars and go even further. We will see transformation of this University of Maine system over the 10 to 12 years of this grant in ways that are deeply tied to the needs of the state of Maine, which is what makes it so exciting. We'll also see innovation as we do that. So lots of universities are working on student success and student retention, for example. It's a major issue for higher education everywhere. But we have some very, I think, interesting ways that we'll go at it that are suited to what we have as strengths here in the University of Maine and the University of Maine system. One example is the following. So we know that students will stay in college in part if they are engaged early on, if they have a personal connection of some kind with faculty or with staff, or with some area that's of real interest to them. So we're getting ready, we'll announce fairly soon, an initiative, we're piloting it here at UMaine, and then our expectation is it'll expand out across the system to engage our first year students in a research learning experience. We hear a lot about juniors and seniors who do internships and co-ops and have the chance to get out into the field or work in labs or work in companies, and that's fantastic, and we want to keep growing that. We also want our first year, second year students to get that chance at a different level, to get a feel for what it means to be part of creating new technologies, part of solving very complex and challenging problems from the research and scholarship perspective. So we have the chance with these dollars to try some things that really fit our system that can make a difference and that will be really of national importance as we understand how they work. So it's an unprecedented kind of opportunity for all of us to make good use of these dollars and make sure that they impact the state in the ways that the Chancellor described.
Hey, Jim, could I just say one other thing, talk about one other part of this?
Please.
I did leave out the Maine Graduate and Professional Center, a commitment of $55 million. Obviously, we need to raise about $50 million around that project. And this is a coming together of our MBA program, programs offered by the Muskie School at the University of Southern Maine, and the law school, now so very well led and stabilized, and I think poised for growth in the near future. If we were able to house all of those programs in one building and one large program, we would be one of only 5 universities in the country to have done that. We will do it, but we will also introduce, as we move forward, other fields of study. If you look at the Fortune 500 and you look at the presidents of those companies, many of them are former engineers, but engineers who have received MBA programs or other degrees. So we want to make sure that we're introducing on an ongoing basis graduate programs that have a more symbiotic relationship with other fields that we have formerly thought as being completely separate and not connected. Somehow law was not involved in business, which of course is ridiculous, or that other programs are not dependent on one another. So we have a big investment to make around those programs. Again, graduate level programs, yes. To be centered in Portland, yes. And new introductions of programs as we move forward.
Could I just add to that briefly?
Please.
Really crucial to all of this is the introduction of a heightened focus for us on computing and information science, which we know is the way of the future in all of the areas that the Chancellor just mentioned, in business, in law, in public policy, and certainly in engineering. So that's why we are, as a part of this project, focusing on how we bring integration to these areas of computing, information science, the fields of engineering. In all of our areas across the university, we are seeing the need for interdisciplinarity. Mechanical engineers really need to understand electrical engineering in order to create their tools and their inventions and their technologies. Structural engineers and composites experts need to understand AI in order to do additive manufacturing work in the smartest possible way, and so forth. So it's just so exciting to have this investment through which we can do the things that are really needed to have a modern, forward-looking, frontier-oriented university.
No, it's very exciting. Certainly as a lawyer who works with business, Chancellor, your point about the interrelationship between those disciplines makes all the sense in the world. And President Freeney-Mundy, the emphasis on data. It seems more and more businesses are making marketing decisions based on data. Certainly the sports world more and more is based on data, and having people who can do that work, which is complex, is important. So it's great to hear that wonderful investment is leveraging more investment and will help make the university system and our state more competitive. So President Freeney-Mundy, let me ask you a question. You have a new title, University of Maine System Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation. What is your vision for this new role, and what is your vision for the future of the university for research, development, and innovation?
Well, thanks. I really appreciate the chance to talk a bit about that. This is a relatively new assignment, and I'm grateful to the Chancellor for having the vision, I think, to elevate the importance of research, development, and innovation, because it's critical for the state of Maine. And the University of Maine system, given the size and scope of it, needs to be a driver in a much more salient way for economic development in the state of Maine, and for preparation of a talented workforce that not only can come into the jobs that are available to them across the state, but that will grow to be the leaders, the innovators, the talented individuals for the future as well. So bringing a focus to that as a system-wide matter, I think, is just incredibly exciting. Indeed, the University of Maine, as the research institution here, as the flagship we have had a long and solid and very good history of producing research, of engaging with communities across Maine to figure out what they need and how to create new knowledge and new technologies to help. Think cooperative extension, that's a great example of applied work where we engage closely with the agriculture community across the state. Our scientists work on everything from blueberry production to new varieties of potatoes. The caribou russet, I would like us to be sure we note here, developed with UMaine Cooperative Extension involvement. And so it's the concept of taking that symbiotic relationship between research and the needs of a state to a new level across the entire system. And so I'm beginning by talking to lots of people and finding out what they see as the needs in the state for a stronger R&D presence, for more support, for more assets that would be able to engage folks across the state. And then we'll take a look across the system to see what we have in each of our campuses, in each of our areas, each of our regions essentially, and think about how we can amplify and expand, enhance opportunities for research there. I would just note that every place where you think about really strong R&D, Silicon Valley, the Boston area, the North Carolina Research Triangle, all of those areas are anchored by major universities that have significant research and development capacity in them. And we have that here in Maine, but we need to grow it. So part of the job will be to figure out how we make partnerships and expand, and again, provide this state with what is needed. But I should say too, make sure that as the research grows and continues, it is nationally and internationally significant as it currently is for so many of our folks around the system.
No, that makes perfect sense. And certainly the university's work in composites and wind energy development are well known and making a difference around the state and around the country. So I think that work is incredible.
Could I add something to that too? I'd like to really single out the Cutler Institute at the University of Southern Maine, another key partner in translational research and in work that truly has implications for policy within the state and nationally. So we have these terrific examples throughout the system that we will look to connect more intentionally, but also to grow.
That's great. Thank you so much. Speaking of Portland, Portland Gateway is a project of the University of Maine, and the University of Maine is in the process of establishing Portland Gateway. Could you tell us a little bit more about this initiative, what you hope it will achieve?
Sure, and I'll go back, Jim, to some things that you mentioned. You talked about our Composites Center, which is, of course, globally known for its work in offshore wind technologies, its work in structures and materials in general, its work in supporting the defense industry, as well as great visibility in the energy world. So that's a fantastic asset located here in Orono. Similarly, we have the Center for Advanced Manufacturing, additive manufacturing work that we do in metals that has proven critical through the pandemic, as it has partnered with manufacturing organizations around the state to take a look at their materials, and as they pivot, how can they produce the right machinery and so forth to develop their products. So I give those as examples because those are really well known in this part of the state and increasingly well known, I believe, in the Portland area. But we would like to make it easy for business leaders and individuals in the southern part of the state now to get access to the R&D capacity that we have here on the Orono campus. So that's the beginning of the Portland Gateway. It's to say, here's a kind of one-stop shop for those who have an interest in what the R&D assets are here on the UMaine campus and how to connect to them, because we've been told repeatedly by business leaders that they kind of know about this, but they don't really know directly how to work with them. So we're going to start with one person. We're hoping to hire a director, and once that person's in place, she or he will be able to start to bring visibility to the University of Maine's research infrastructure. That said, We have tremendous collaborations with the University of Southern Maine, and so that will be connecting together. And as this begins to grow, I see potential for connection to the Maine Center that the Chancellor described earlier, as we're looking for these professional graduate programs to prepare people for the future. Wouldn't it be cool if the Advanced Structures and Composites Center has a way to link into the programmatic offerings of the Maine Center in Portland? So stay tuned. This will evolve, and in a lot of consultation with Portland leaders as we try to think about what's most necessary and how to connect well.
Great. That's very important to hear, and certainly the Portland Chamber looks forward to continuing our work and partnership to make sure that all of those resources of the university system are known throughout the state, including in the Portland region. So let me turn, there's really a question for both of you, but maybe I'll start with Chancellor Malloy. You've given us some tremendous optimism about the future of public universities and the success of the state. What challenges are facing the university that keep you up at night?
This is only a 1 hour show.
Just one, sorry.
So what I would say to you is we are extremely grateful to the people of Maine for the contributions they've made to our success in the past, the building of buildings and roads and walkways that crisscross our campuses and the like. But the stark reality today is that 53% of our infrastructure has an effective age of 50 years or more. That's a dangerous proposition. That means that we're putting more money into maintaining buildings that in all likelihood should be eliminated and replaced for the next 50 or 100 years. So I think infrastructure is going to be a big challenge. We probably need hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to upgrade, make ADA compliant, make gender equitable facilities for learning and teaching, as well as athletics and other things. So that's going to be a real challenge. By the way, 53% in the University of Maine system. The national average is 18%. So we are that much older in our facilities, that much further behind. Some of the work that Joan has just referenced is taking places in facilities that, compared to other facilities just in New England, are much older, have had less investment and fewer updates. So infrastructure is going to be a very big point of what we need to do going forward. I'll also just join Joan's discussion on the issue of research. In Maine, with respect to our GDP, about 0.8% goes into research. The New England average is 4.4%. So we are way behind in making the kinds of investments in our research functionality and then applying that research to actual investment areas that will drive economic growth. We're behind. And so I would say infrastructure and improving our research function. I look forward to the day when Maine is recognized as the top tier of research institutions. I think that's just around the corner, in part because of some of the work that both of you have referenced that is already underway. But we're going to need to support that work with the implements, with the infrastructure, with the skill set, both in the classroom, on the faculty side and on the student side. So we have a lot of investment to make to be competitive with the rest of New England, the rest of the country, and the rest of the world.
Chancellor, just one quick follow-up. When you mentioned the level of investment in Maine as compared to the rest of New England in research and development, is that a combination of state and private? Is that university? Where does that money come from?
It's part of the equation of the total GDP of each state. first and foremost. It does represent the fact that we do have a research university. Much of that research that is included in that 0.8% involves that particular university, but other universities are also in our constellation, as well as the rest of the broader Maine community, and some private, albeit not-for-profit research organizations that are situated. But we're just not as deep into that as Massachusetts is. We're just not as deep into that as New Hampshire or Connecticut are. And so if we want to compete with those states, if we want to attract the talent to our state that those states have been able to attract to their states, we're going to have to step up our game. And I think around this particular area, research in particular, is going to be a very, very important investment for us to make. I think Maine's best days are ahead of it if we support Maine. And support means making long-term investments in the infrastructure of our higher educational system and systems as we move forward.
Great, thank you so much. And I'll turn to you, President Freeney-Mundy. Same question. What keeps you up at night about the university?
Sure. Well, all of the things that he said, plus something that I'm particularly reminded about because my daughter teaches 5th grade in Massachusetts. But as I watch her, and she did some Zoom teaching from our dining room for a couple of weeks around the holidays, so I could watch what this was like. I think that our students who are in the K through 12 community right now, together with our university students, have had an extraordinarily challenging couple of years or year since the pandemic began. And I think as a nation, and particularly as a state, we can't know the implications of that for quite a while, but we need to be behaving as though there are implications. Some folks talk about learning loss, which is a kind of deficit model. We've also seen tremendous resilience. We've seen students who become very ingenious themselves about how to engage with Zoom and how to help their teachers believe they're really online when they're actually not. And there's just a whole new set of skills that is coming through for our kids K-12. But at the same time, we know that the traditional educational experience that they've had has gone away. And so what does that mean for our universities as we look to the future? What does it mean for Maine, where we just can't know? My area is math, so I'll use that. We can't know what the experience has been like for juniors and seniors who will be coming to college next year. So as the Chancellor talks about the need to double the number of engineers, which is absolutely true for Maine, as we talk about building up an R&D infrastructure ecosystem that includes our undergraduates and that has people ready for very interesting, challenging jobs when they finish. We have some work to do, I think, to figure out what the continuing pivots look like for ensuring the preparation of our students and that we're ready to meet them where they are when they come to our universities and find new ways to be sure that if there are gaps, we help to fill them. If there are new strengths that we need to amplify, we find a way to do it. So there's a learning piece that I spend a lot of time trying to think about how we address it.
Thank you. And I think now we'll turn to some audience questions. And we have had a few questions come in through the chat. Let me start by talking about something that you just said, President Freeney-Mundy, about engagement and what are the new students coming forward? What do they need? How does the virtual experience work? And ultimately, how are we producing the workforce that we need for the future of Maine? And workforce development is something that is at the top of the list for goals of the Portland Chamber. It's something I said at the outset of today's program. And we've talked a lot over the last number of years about, I think, and you mentioned earlier, is this engagement between businesses and opportunities for students to get real world experience and then get engaged, be able to hit the ground running. Can you talk a little bit more about co-op opportunities, or I'll include internship as well, for students to get that necessary experience so that they are engaged and then become the workers of the future?
Thank you. And of course, Absolutely, I'm on the same page with this notion that engagement is key. Research about learning tells us that, right? When the learning is more meaningful and kind of is retained more fully when there has been an active engagement by the learner. And there are lots and lots of ways to do that. Co-ops, internships, summer experiences, research experiences for undergraduates, all of those are ways into that kind of engagement. We have a lot of them across the system. Part of what I'm trying to do as I work into this new title that I'm taking on is to learn much more about exactly what those are. We hope with the Alphon dollars, we'll be able to develop a better sort of a catalog of the pathways to careers that we have across the system, so that we can show students that if you start here with this level of interest in this area and you undertake these experiences along the way, you're pretty likely to have a very good job opportunity waiting for you. So the co-ops are crucial. We're very pleased to have our partners from Northeastern University, the Rue Institute here in Maine, because we have much to learn from them about co-ops. But at the same time, we have a number of experiences across the system that we just need to kind of clarify more for the world. I would also add something at all the national studies that look at what companies are looking for in their workforce, what skills and talents and knowledge capabilities they want to see. You see things on the list like ability to communicate well, ability to work in groups, ability to tackle complex problems. I would posit, and we don't know this and we'll need to study it, that the young people going through this pandemic with all of their Zoom learning and their disrupted internet connections and their challenges in finding the right space to sit and ability to concentrate, they are learning flexibility, persistence, communication skills, actually, because it's different to be on a Zoom screen and to make sure that somebody listens to you and pays attention to what you have to say. Nimbleness. I think we may see a generation of people who through the pandemic have acquired some capabilities that we just need to then nurture and fold into and build from in these co-ops and internship experiences. So short answer, we're very supportive, of course, of those kinds of experiences. I feel like we have some work to do to partner well with the business community to be sure we're aware of all of those opportunities and that we're feeding students into those opportunities coherently.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and this also comes from the audience. There's a lot of great Maine businesses. We're looking to not only help those businesses succeed and get the workforce that they need, but hopefully attract new businesses to Maine, knowing that they have the workforce. University of Maine system attracts Maine students, but also attracts people not from Maine. What sort of tactics, strategies does the system consider to help the students that we attract to Maine stay here in Maine and become our future workforce?
Well, I think the answer to this question is very much tied to the statements that the president just made about our outreach to the companies that are here. We are far more likely to keep a student from out of state or keep that person employed in our state because they were educated here. Then it's easier to do that than to attract people who are getting their degrees elsewhere. Imagine how much richer that relationship would be and that retention, how much higher that retention rate would be if we could place more of our students in those internships, in those co-ops, in those learning opportunities alongside of more mature individuals who are already involved in that area. We know that contact point, that introduction to the commerce of Maine made for a student from out of state is much more likely to produce that student staying in the state. So we have a big emphasis on that. I'm not sure we've been as good over the long haul as we could be in our outreach. It's one of the reasons that I asked President Farini-Mundy to also take on the new task that she's agreed to take on. That outreach to companies throughout the state of Connecticut, out of the state of Maine, throughout business types, and throughout the areas that we are preparing that human capital for are going to be extremely important. Maine needs to grow. It needs to grow its own talent. We're very good at that. Most of our in-state students stay in-state when they enter the working world. But we need to find ways to attract additional talent. And quite frankly, we want jobs to follow the talent that we're producing. I think one of the shortfalls on a long-term economic look at Maine is perhaps we weren't telling our story, and perhaps we weren't preparing the talent in the areas that would drive economic growth in the future. I think we've corrected that. We know what's going to drive the future. For instance, in our own MBA program, we've gone from producing about 140 MBA graduates a year to a substantially larger number. Right now, over 419 students in our MBA program in the state of Maine. We're making it easier to obtain that degree, and those individuals, once employed in the state of Maine, can move up the ranks and drive additional innovation. And that's true of many other fields, and this concentration at all of our universities on research, but most particularly at the University of Maine. And again, I think this reference to the Cutler Center is that's a world-class institution.
Chancellor, thank you so much. And I want to thank you. I want to thank President Farini Mundi for really a wonderful presentation here today, wonderful work over the last number of years. I think all of us are extremely excited about what the system is doing, what it will do. The Chamber really appreciates the partnership that we've had with the system. We're pleased that Jim Irwin, a member of our board, has served as chair of the Board of Trustees. President Cummings from USM is on our board as well. We really value that connectivity. So thank you so much for your great work. If there are follow-up questions that our audience has, we'll certainly pass those along, and today's program will be available on YouTube later today. So as we thank our guests and conclude today's program, please know that you can view a complete list of all of the Chamber's upcoming events on the Chamber's website. We also encourage you to subscribe to the Chamber's newsletter. And please be sure to follow the Chamber across all major social media platforms. We look forward to seeing you next month at Eggs and Issues, which is May 12th of this year. And in the meantime, be well, stay healthy, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.